Republican senator from Louisiana, John Kennedy, is on the Judiciary Committee and says that he trusts the administration's judgment in taking out these boats. Senator Kennedy, good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us today, sir. You have also said, though, that you would like to see more transparency on this. There was a briefing yesterday of some members of the Senate, Republican members of the Senate. Democrat members of the Senate were a little miffed that they weren't included in that. And I know that you were briefed by Secretary of State Rubio. What can you tell us? And were you more satisfied after that briefing?
Well, in the grand scheme of life, death, and the resurrection, this is not that complicated. The people being killed are terrorists. We call them narco-terrorists because they're killing our children with drugs. They're just as much terrorists as the jihadists in the Sahel in Africa, in Mali, in Mozambique, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. In fact, the narco-terrorists in our hemisphere are really even more dangerous in the sense that they're killing more Americans. President Trump's doing something about it, and I thank him for that. Now, some of my colleagues, appropriately, have raised questions about due process and the rule of law. I have met with Secretary of State Rubio, who has explained in great detail about why what we are doing is legal and why the people that we are killing are known narco terrorists. If I were king for a day, I'm not, and I don't aspire to be, I would ask Secretary of State Rubio to give the same briefing to every Republican, to every Democrat in the United States Senate. It would be classified, and then go out in front of the public and explain to the press as much as he could without giving classified information what he just told us and take questions. And I think the American people then will support what the president's doing. Look, I hear my Democratic colleagues, and I appreciate it. And to some extent, they're right. They deserve to be briefed. But I also know that some of my Democratic colleagues are not in good faith. It doesn't matter what they're briefed on. They're going to oppose the president on this.
Senator, let me ask you another question. This happened at noon today. It's reported from the Washington Post. And it says that in a letter that was meant for eyes of the Russian leader Putin, Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan president, made multiple requests asking for defensive radar, military aircraft repairs, and potentially missiles, according to U.S. government documents that were obtained by the Washington Post. The Venezuelan government, according to these documents, is also reaching out to China and Iran, sourcing military assistance and equipment to strengthen Venezuela's defenses. What does that signal to you about where this may head, potentially, Senator?
Well, Mr. Maduro, who has seized control of Venezuela, is a terrorist himself. He has blood stains under his fingernails. He's not there by popular support. In fact, he has a cartel full of narco-terrorists of his own, and he's scared. And I'm glad he's scared. He's scared that he's going to be attacked. And yes, he's supported right now by Cuba. I'm sure he is talking to America's enemies, China, for example, Russia. But he's just as much at fault as some of these people driving the boats with the drugs in them.
Well, thank you very much, Senator. And we hear what you're saying in terms of releasing as much information as is, feasible. Obviously, a lot of this is classified to give people a better understanding of what is going on and why. And also, your take on Maduro is solid as well, as always. So it's always good to see you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Martha, these people are like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. They're crazy, and they want to kill Americans. And I appreciate the fact that Trump is killing them first.
We hear you. Thank you very much, Senator. Good to have you with us, sir. Have a good weekend.
Hello, everyone. Congressman Dr. Raul Ruiz here. I'm in Riverside at the Feed America Riverside San Bernardino facility and warehouse. They're one of 3 Feed America programs in California's 25th district that serve my constituents. You have Imperial Valley, you have Find Regional Food Bank in the Coachella Valley, and you have this warehouse that feeds my constituents in Hemet, San Jacinto, Banning, Beaumont, Cabazon, and Needles. And so the reason why I'm here is to really bring awareness to the 186 billion cuts to SNAP under the big, beautiful bill, better known as the Big Ugly Law, the largest cuts to this program in the nation's history in order to give billions of dollars in tax breaks to billionaires. And the shutdown only exacerbates those rates of hunger. We are now in the 5th week of this shutdown, and Speaker Johnson canceled work in Congress for the 5th week in a row. That is unacceptable when American families are going to go hungry right before Thanksgiving. So we need to make sure that President Trump, who releases the full amount of funding to feed Americans through the SNAP program. It took the state of California and other states to sue the administration and a judge to order the administration to release the contingency emergency funds to fund SNAP program. And yet they still are holding back funds and only funding 50% of it. That's unacceptable. We need the full funds so that people can be fully fed during and meet their full nutritional needs during the November holiday season. That's why we are continuing to fight. Speaker Johnson needs to stop canceling work. Everybody needs to go back to DC and negotiate, work on the funding, reopen the government, protect the SNAP or CalFresh program, to protect healthcare and to prevent the skyrocketing costs of premiums if we don't extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits and lower overall costs.
Earlier today, Democratic Congressman Chris Deluzio volunteered at 412 Food Rescue because of the issue.
It's terrible. And look, this is the richest country in the history of planet Earth. Folks who are working their butts off should not be worrying about starving kids going hungry.
He said there's no reason SNAP benefits should not have continued.
Now, I know we're in a government shutdown that I think is foolish and I want us to get out of, and there's a bipartisan path out of this. But seeing SNAP benefits not go out, that's a choice the administration is making. They don't need to make that choice. And in fact, I think the law requires them to spend this emergency funding to make sure those benefits do go out on November 1st.
Now, officials say even if benefits are ordered to continue, they'll likely be delayed. Governor Shapiro says it could take at least 10 days.
For the viewers at home to really understand the scope of this, it really is breathtaking. And I mentioned 100 times worth in Watergate. That may be an understatement. What happened was 3 days after President Trump announced he was running for president, the entirety of government and the Justice Department was weaponized against him to bankrupt him and his family and put him in jail for the rest of his life. So what happened? In Atlanta, a state case was, created to go after President Trump. The number 2 person in that case met with the White House. Alvin Bragg in New York began his criminal trial against President Trump, and the number 3 person left DOJ to go join Alvin Bragg's office. Then, of course, you have Jack Smith, who's notorious in prosecutor circles as the henchman you assigned to go get your person, the show me the man, I'll show you the crime kind of prosecutor. He's a total dirtbag. Brings this case against President Trump. But it wasn't just a war against a man, Peter. This was against a movement. So Arctic Frost was going after not just President Trump, but sitting United States senators with subpoenas. The Republican Attorneys General Association, I happen to be the chairman of that organization at the time, Charlie Kirk's organization, this massive dragnet to sweep up people because they were Republicans. That was their crime. So this is sweeping. It's huge in scope. We're just getting this information right now because of whistleblowers. If President Trump wouldn't have won, all this stuff would be buried. But whistleblowers have come forward. We need Watergate-style hearings for months on this to continue that investigation. There ought to be probably charges brought, eventually resignations. And one final point, Judge Boasberg, who's become notorious from the FISA courts, also making a speech trying to thwart President Trump's agenda before President Trump got in. And then, of course, course, somehow ending up with all these cases in the D.C. area, even though he wasn't the assignment judge, actually wrote in an attachment to these subpoenas to the telecommunications companies that you can't tell Senator Cruz, you can't tell these other senators that the subpoena was out there because they would destroy evidence. That's just beyond the pale. And I think impeachment proceedings should begin in the House of Representatives.
Hi, everybody. Andrew Muller here at the Eagle Forum Phyllis Schlafly event. I'm here with Missouri's freshest congressman, Bob Onder, who I've known for a handful of years through the St. Louis Teen Eagles Phyllis Schlafly student organization. And he just gave a great speech talking about abortion and the right to life, redistricting efforts in Missouri. And he's just been a great constitutional ally. Congressman Onder, I got to ask you about the government shutdown. This is what everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
As of the time of recording this, SNAP benefits just ended today, food stamps. What's the constitutionality of that? Is the left going to cave to the Trump administration's demands as a result of this and the pressure from people who get SNAP?
Yeah, well, again, the fight here, Andrew, is just over whether to keep the government open. And, we should fund the government by passing 12 appropriation bills in the various areas, but that hasn't been done for quite some time. So what has happened again and again, 14 times under the Biden administration, has been to pass continuing resolutions. A so-called clean continuing resolution, which we passed in the House on September 19th, to just keep the funding going at current levels. And the Democrats are making all sorts of crazy demands in return for a yes vote. They want us to undo all the reforms in the big, beautiful bill on Medicaid. They want us to continue the COVID-era Obamacare subsidies forever. They want us to fund NPR and promise not to do any more rescission bills. And that's just a non-starter. But I do think we're making progress. I do think there are a handful of Democrats, I would say sensible Democrats, but at least Democrats in states that Donald Trump won, who I think will come around, do the right thing, and get the government open again.
Excellent. You talked in your speech about codifying Trump's agenda. What are some of the key things Congress has done, and more importantly, things you want to see codified from Trump's administration?
Yeah, we've done a number of things on the immigration front. We did them in the big, beautiful bill, and then we did them in standalone bills like the Lake and Riley Act. In all, I believe there were 29 Trump executive orders codified in the big, beautiful bill, also known as the Working Families Tax Cut Act. But we need to do more. For instance, the big, beautiful bill, the House version of it, completely defunded transgender care for kids and adults. We should not be paying for sex change operations at a time when we have a $37 trillion debt. The big, beautiful bill also, the House version, also defunded Planned Parenthood for a decade. It turns out the Senate parliamentarian didn't like that, and we're only defunding Planned Parenthood for a year. But we need to do more of that because let's face it, Trump has done many, many good things by executive order, but the next Democrat president could just undo those things.
Exactly. Final question. You said in your speech you just gave here at the Eagle Council that there was one thing you differed with on the Trump administration on pro-life, and that was IVF. And I think you made a really good convictional stance about that from a pro-life perspective about all these babies that are just being left in test tubes. Can you kind of, just in a nutshell, explain that difference you have with the Trump administration and what your thoughts are on IVF?
Yeah, the Trump administration, seems to believe that being, pro-family means to assist families with the problem of infertility. I would agree with that, of course. I think there are many causes of infertility, I think, that are often ignored by the so-called IVF specialists, like endometriosis or like hormonal imbalances. But yeah, the idea of conceiving many, many babies in test tubes when only a tiny number of those will survive. You see, the process of harvesting eggs, from women involves harvesting many eggs, sometimes dozens, and generally they all get fertilized because unfertilized eggs don't keep very well in the deep freeze. It's kind of crude that we're talking about this when we're talking about human life. So I think there are big pro-life concerns about IVF, and I think there are better ways to promote family formation and to treat infertility than going right to IVF.
Excellent. Congressman Bob Onder, thank you so
very much.
Stay tuned, guys. We'll be back with more coverage.
President Trump announced the United States will restart its testing of nuclear weapons. This comes after Russia announced its promise to do the same. Senator Jacky Rosen talked about the announcement during the Senate hearing today. She discussed how Nevada was already used to a test site from the 50s to the early 90s.
During this era, which we must not returned to millions of people, and acres of land were contaminated by radiation. And my state of Nevada is still suffering.
While major nuclear powers have not conducted tests in decades, the president may have been referring to the testing of missile delivery systems. Senator Rosen said she would do everything in her power to try to prevent nuclear tests from resuming. We reached out to Congressman Mark Amodei and Governor Joe Lombardo's offices for their responses to resuming testing. We've not yet heard back.
Today marks day 34 of the Democrat shutdown. Here are some headlines from over the weekend highlighting the pain the Democrats are inflicting on the American people each day that they prolong this mess. Quote, government workers, SNAP recipients feel the pain as the government shutdown drags on. Quote, staffing shortages mire air travel as shutdown stretches on. Quote, government shutdown threatens to delay home heating aid for millions of low-income families. And that's just to name a few. Democrats have now voted against opening the government 14 times. That's 14 times that they voted against our military. That's 14 times that they have voted against federal law enforcement officers, air traffic controllers, and TSA agents. 14 times they have voted against low-income Americans who rely on programs like SNAP and WIC. Why? Not because they actually care about lowering the cost of health care like they claim. Just look at the 68-page counterproposal they filed in the Senate. Only 1.5 pages reference health care. The other 66 outline their radical policy priorities like billions of dollars for foreign climate projects or $500 million to prop up leftist media outlets. The fact of the matter is that the Democratic Party is not fighting for you, the American public. They've shut the government down to pick a fight with President Trump and to score points with Kami Mandami and Omar Fada, the Omar Fada wing of their party. The Democrats have become kamikaze politicians who are so focused on winning some kind of political game that they've justified blowing up everything in their wake, including the livelihoods of their own constituents. Democrat Senator John Fetterman said it best on CNN yesterday, quote, we are hurting the very people that we fight for, and now we're getting nothing for them if we continue to keep our government shut down. Quote, this is wrong, he went on to say, and he's exactly right. It's past time for Democrats to end the political games, pass our clean CR, and reopen the government for the people they were elected to serve. Back to the Speaker.
What's happening with ICE in Chicago is an outrage, and I want to share with you some of the facts. ICE agents are masked, wearing combat gear, stopping people in our neighborhoods, deploying tear gas in our streets, pepper spraying protesters, and this is just what we've been able to capture on footage. Here's a glimpse of their extreme conduct under orders from the Trump administration.
He's a citizen! He's a citizen!
7 years old. Be easy. Do not resist. Say that. 7 years.
He's not doing anything. You're saying that.
Do you have a sign to be so warm?
Time after time, federal courts have ordered ICE to stop their attacks on innocent people in Chicago, but they continue. I'm doing everything I can to show what's happening in Chicago to lawmakers and hold the Trump administration accountable for this constitutional crisis. Since this all started, I've heard it from so many Chicagoans about how it impacts their families, especially the heartbreaking story of Ophelia. Her dad was taken by ICE despite no criminal record, just after she had left chemotherapy.
Did the agents ever say why they were stopping him?
No.
What do you think about that? Is he a criminal?
I mean, he had parking, like tickets, like traffic tickets from before I was born. I don't know. I mean, I've gotten a parking ticket. Am I a criminal? To the ICE agents who smashed my dad's window, to the ICE agent who pointed a gun at my dad, I'm not mad at you. I have no hate in my heart for you. I just want you to know that that was not the right thing to do.
I ask you to please pay attention. Stand with the innocent children and families. Stand with Chicago and share this information with a friend.
On Thursday, I sounded the alarm as the lapse in government funding endangered food assistance for 42 million Americans rapidly approached. That was November 1st, the approach date. I called on Senator Schumer to end the partisanship and vote for a clean extension of government funding. 45 Democrats have opposed clean extension of funding 13 times. Republicans have voted for it 13 times. The Trump administration is putting a temporary Band-Aid on the program, tapping into emergency funds that will cover half a month of food stamps. Meanwhile, I've got Iowans calling my office, asking me where they can get food for their families. This is a sad commentary on the politics of a nation and a nation of abundance. I always say, you're only 9 meals away from a revolution. Just think, if you're a family, you got children, 3 days without any food, what action you might take if you can't properly feed them. We've seen those sorts of revolutions in other states or in other countries. So let's feed the American people with the bipartisan cooperation they deserve, and the bipartisan cooperation that has always been a part of the food stamp program. Because over decades ago, 2 famous senators, Dole and McGovern, in a bipartisan fashion, came up with the idea that why should we have people that are nutrition deficient in the United States when the federal government has warehouses full of plenty of food. So that's the basis for the food stamp program. We should continue that bipartisan cooperation. I hope the Democrats will wake up and give families a permanent solution to the government programs they rely on.
Now, I feel very blessed to be from the greatest state in all of America. I know what we stand for. I know our values. And this is one of those elections where we have a chance to elevate an extraordinary woman who has always been taking things to a higher level as a helicopter pilot herself. I believe in Mikey Sherrill. I've known her for years and years, since she was a U.S. prosecutor helping to keep our community safe. Her whole career is a testimony to the greatest of all American values, which is love. And love is not sentimentality. Love is not saccharine. Love is service and sacrifice for your neighbor.
The House passed a simple bill to keep the government open at the same spending levels the Democrats approved earlier this year with no changes in law. Just keep the doors open while we finish the appropriations process. And the Senate Democrats are using cloture to block that simple bill in the Senate over their demands for $1.5 trillion of new spending at a time when the federal government is worse than broke. But we're borrowing nearly $2 trillion a year just to pay our bills.
I guess what I'm getting at, Congressman, is are we going to see 40 million Americans not get their SNAP benefits? Are we going to continue to see more missed paychecks? Are we going to get Americans the 20 million who use Obamacare, are they going to log in and see 2x premiums? Is that what's coming?
There is a very simple way to prevent that from happening, and that is to pass the simple continuing resolution. And remember your schoolhouse rock. The House sends an appropriation to the Senate. We did that on September the 19th. Then the Senate either changes the bill and sends it back to the House, or it passes the bill on to the president. Well, Schumer's blocking any action on it. So explain to me what the House can do at this point that it hasn't already done. This is entirely in Chuck Schumer's hands, and
what about negotiate
those
something
who
else?
are following him in the Senate.
What about negotiate something else? Maybe a side deal?
Well, again, there's nothing to negotiate because there's nothing in the continuing resolution that changes law. It simply keeps the doors open so that we can have those discussions.
You know, you made a post just the other day, Congressman, in which you said the following. You said, just as our federal workers aren't getting paid, I have to ask the House of Representatives to withhold my own compensation for the duration of the shutdown. You make and your colleagues make in the area of about $175,000. The average, the median household income in your district is $91,000. Don't you think that the folks in your district want a little more than just simply messaging tweets?
Well, it's a gesture. I agree, but it's a gesture that I felt was necessary because I couldn't look the TSA officers at the airport in the eye if I was being paid when they weren't, and they are required to show up for work. If you'll recall, just last week, a bill was placed on the floor by Ron Johnson in the Senate to pay all of the essential workers who are still required to show up for work. And aren't getting paychecks. It assured that they would be paid on time, and it was voted down by Senate Democrats. So, this is not complicated. It is at the feet of the Senate Democrats who continue to block this legislation, which would again simply keep the doors open so that we can have discussions over all of the issues that are facing the country.
Tom McClintock, a Republican from California. Thanks for being with us tonight, sir. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I'm Congressmember Judy Chu. And on this day, when SNAP benefits could be cut for millions of people across America, I just said, I have to be here. Because I heard about this pop-up market right at the Pasadena Boys and Girls Club. They are making sure we get the food that people need, especially now that the SNAP benefits are going. It's horrendous that the Trump administration would even attempt to kick millions of people off. We're talking about 42 million Americans. And it's a manufactured crisis. We should not be having this happen at a time when so many Americans are trying to make ends meet.
This shutdown by Democrats have caused already dramatic pain to real families, and it's going to get worse. You see the SNAP benefits. That's 42 million people that are going to be going without food because Democrats are just angry at the election of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is delivering on all the things he said he would do. The far left has gotten even more nutty. You look, they're about to elect Mondami as the mayor of New York City, an avowed socialist Marxist. That's where their party is going, and that's who Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are trying to appease. They don't care about the American people. They've said they know they're inflicting suffering on families. Democrats have said that openly, and they said they don't care. They just want leverage. They can't say what they want leverage for. That's really the worst part of this. They're hurting families knowingly, and Democrats still want to keep this going. I don't think it's sustainable because the American people have figured it out. They're disgusted by it. The unions, more and more every day, every union in America is saying, Democrats, end this madness, end the shutdown, and then go negotiate with Republicans on things you disagree on. But stop holding the American people hostage in the meantime.
Hey, West Michigan, I'm back in D.C. this week after being in West Michigan with you all at town halls and connecting with you about the dangers of SNAP benefits being cut. I'm here to push our Republican leadership to put votes on the floor so that we can reopen the government. This shutdown has gone on far too long. never should have even happened in the first place. We have got to come together and get this figured out for the American people. I'm here working for you.